You're telling me that a new movie's coming out starring Nicolas Cage playing himself in the movie, and it's about Nicolas Cage? And am I going to review it? You're damn right I'm going to review it. You know why? Because I'm movie friggin' woo! Man.
I'm Nick Friggin! Whoa, Cage!
Alright, full disclosure, I look and sound different because I'm sick. You might say this film was so sick that I contracted an illness. I'm feeling a bit better today, and thank you to Regal and Regal Unlimited for allowing me to see this film over a week early. I figured if I would go to see it early, I gotta get a review out and get that review early before the movie starts, because that helped me get some views when Moonfall was a thing, so bear with me. My head's a little bit loopy. I'm not 100%, but I'm feeling better than I was yesterday, so without further ado, today we have the unbearable weight of massive talent. So I remember seeing the first trailers for this pop up, and I was already sold. I was hooked, right? I have made this no secret of mine in the past, as I've reviewed at least one of his films on here. I unironically love Nicolas Cage. I think he's a great actor. I think he's such a unique actor, and he's played roles in both some of the weirdest, most avant-garde pieces, as well as some of the most grounded and heartbreaking, intense dramas. He's gone across the whole spectrum. Some of the worst and weirdest movies I've seen, he's been in. Some of the best, craziest movies I've seen, he's also been in. So I just feel like, at this point, he just does whatever he wants to do, which, kudos to you, Nick. So as you can no doubt tell by what may be maybe the second most creative title, I'm right up there with Everything Everywhere All at Once and Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, but this movie, as you can tell, is going to be incredibly self-aware in regard to the Nicolas Cage sphere and him as a person, an actor, and a character, right? So I was already, based on the first trailer, on the title, the fact that Nicolas Cage was in it, it already had me sold. The director, we have a Tom Gormican. Very small filmography. He's been a writer and producer on some stuff, but the only other film that he's done was a 2014 film called That Awkward Moment, which, although I hadn't heard about it personally, it has a very full cast of people that are the who's who of actors. So I don't know how it slipped by. Maybe I did see a trailer for it. I'm just not too familiar with that material. But this appears to be a more mainstream Hollywood directorial debut for old Tommy Boy over here. The first trailer wasn't as revealing. The second trailer was a bit more revealing, but I guess, that's okay, because it kind of sells you. But the plot stars, of course, Nicolas Cage playing himself. So, Nick Cage. And then you have the one that's hiring him to basically show up and be there for his birthday party for a million schmackos. You have, who could it be? Somebody we might not know, perhaps? Oh no, just Pedro Pascal, as I'm sure most of you know him from The Mandalorian, or as I would know him prior to that from, I think my initial introduction for Pedro was mostly Game of Thrones, but since both of these things have happened, he's of course gotten more roles in all this. He's shown up in more. And there are other, important cast members in this film, but more or less it stars these two. They have the most scenes together. Their whole character dynamic and growth is between the two of them, and it's really just about these two here. So, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. What did I think? It's a mixed bag for me right now. There aren't a lot of reviews out there, but I'll be honest, and maybe my review is only a little bit clouded because when I went to see this, I was starting to become sick, so my head was getting a bit foggy. I didn't realize what it was till it hit me later, like a fucking freight train, but my head was a little bit foggy. Not to mention, I'd already seen the big trailer multiple times, which, by the way, I will say, the second trailer for this movie, which everybody's kind of in slang is referring to as Massive Talent, I guess just to avoid the long title of it, right? But the second trailer for this, one of the best cut trailers I've ever seen in a hot minute. It's a fantastic job of marketing that really sells the film the way the film is trying to be sold and sell itself, Overall, I really enjoyed this. I have some disappointments and gripes and some complaints, but I'll get to those in a minute. As always, we gotta start with the pros. As always, I love watching Nicolas Cage in anything he's in, and this movie is no exception. He is truly just Nicolas Cage, but it's weird because usually he's playing characters or roles that like are adjacent to himself. He's been in behind the scenes featurettes where talking about a film like, I don't know, let's say Mandy, for example, how he had been in this bad injury in his life, and as he was recovering and trying to get back to like being on his feet, when it came to this role after that in Mandy, he kind of channeled a lot of that anger and frustration into some key scenes in that film, and it comes off as just very raw and emotional, to me anyway. And you can also see this type of stuff when you watch Pig, which is still one of my favorite performances of his, period. But it's kind of weird because he's always played either like offshoots or versions of himself or injected a bit of himself into the work, but then to see a film where he is supposed to be quote-unquote playing himself, you know, you wonder, like, when is this when the switch is off? Is this just him embracing his inners? How much of this is true to form for him? Is it still a character? It's very much like, it's not as intense as being John Malkovich or, you know, and get inside an actor's head or whatever. It's nothing as cerebral as that, but it does raise some questions, and it gives you more subtext for a very interesting performance from him. Additionally, and you might see it in the reviews that have come out so far as well, Pedro Pascal is the other highlight of the film. The scenes they have together are great. Their comedic chemistry and all that, even a bit of the dramatic chemistry that comes into play, it all works very well together. In the movie, Pedro's kind of fanboying over having Nicolas Cage even just being there in the same room, and you can kind of tell that might be true to form because I believe Nick is like definitely older than Pedro. So the idea that, like, you know, it just be, oh, here's someone who's been in more recent years has become a Hollywood star and gets to basically hang out with this other Hollywood legend, which at this point, Nicolas Cage, household name, and I would argue like legend. Although the trailers kind of showed some more of the like comedic scenes and all that, and some of the like the bigger set piece moments, I think in terms of like comedy and how they worked, and just I think overall a lot of the jokes work and land in the movie. There's a lot of like subtle comedy, there's a lot of like in your face comedy, a lot of like, oh, LOL, it's just Nick Cage being Nick Cage. The story, you know, is it airtight? Maybe not, but overall it's very serviceable for this narrative. Like, it's kind of like, it's funny how Nick is at a point where he's like, man, acting's not going quite how I want it to be. He's like, why do you think I'm taking all these weird roles? And it's like, I gotta pay the bills. And it's like, hello people, what do you want? If you want to see me in better movies, you tell Hollywood to give me better movies. Nothing ever gets truly emotional or like truly cerebral, but it all works for the purposes it serves to work for, which is just like Nick Cage, Pedro Pascal running around this island, hijinks ensue, basically. Plus, one of my favorite parts of the film, and I think the trailers kind of spoiled this a little bit, but I love how Nick has like an internal like spirit guide, which is himself, but like early 2000s, late 90s version of like Nicolas Cage himself, like this young CGI, like young baby face Nick Cage. It's like this fucking wah, and like in his head, like talking to him. That's pretty great. It seems very much a thing that I could see being what's really like going on inside of his noggin, you know? But like any other movie, you know, it wasn't perfect. There were some cons for me. My biggest complaint about the film has got to be that it feels a bit disjointed. It feels like a lot of the scenes that happen in the film, the narrative flow, the progression, a lot of the scenes are just kind of like disjointed. It has that feel to it where it just like, it's not so much like here's a fluid narrative story, but it's like here's a collection of scenes that Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal filmed together, and now we're going to kind of put them together with just clear enough of an intention where you know like where they're going, what's happening. Like it wasn't confusing, it never threw me off or anything, but it was just noticeable enough where I was like, that's kind of like, whoa, like, oh, we're here now, oh, we're there now, and it's like, here's this funny scene, here's this like SNL skit, here's this funny bit with the two of them doing a thing now. It's like, it just felt a little bit like, you know, uneven. My other complaint can't really be a huge complaint, but I've pointed it out before in movies, and I gotta point it out again. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because the second trailer for this movie is a fantastic trailer and also shows a lot of its hand. And when you watch the movie, a lot of what's in the trailer, a lot of the moments that are played for laughs and all that, you already know what's coming because you've seen the trailer and you can put two and two together. So it kind of spoiled a lot of segments of the film for me. They didn't make them any less funny necessarily. I like going into a film not knowing what's going to happen, right? And it was kind of cool that like there were some shots in the trailer that clearly were cut out of the final film, and I like that. I like it when a trailer doesn't even use all the assets in itself and shows you something almost different, just to kind of give you what I think a trailer should give you, which is an idea and a feel for what you're going to see, but doesn't actually show you too much of what you're going to see. While I am thankful the trailer didn't use all its material from the film, I also was like a little bit crestfallen that so much of what I saw in the trailer was featured in the film and it didn't go much further than that, if that makes any sense. The narrative is nothing too spectacular. I was really kind of hoping for something like mind-bendy, really out there, like big blockbuster type of film. And there were some moments that got pretty close, right? And there were some like moments that made me laugh pretty hard out loud. There were some moments that I did really enjoy about this film. But I didn't walk out of this being like, oh my god, I love that. This embodies the full essence of Nicolas Cage. Like, there's better movies that I could see that he's been in that I would have enjoyed more. And this film serves its purpose and all that, but like, I was just a little bit let down, you know? I was kind of hoping for a bit more of a wow factor. I'm actually surprised, and pleasantly surprised, mind you, but I'm surprised that it's getting as high of the reviews that it's getting so far. Almost 100%. Granted, it's only about 40 reviews, right? But like, I'm pleasantly surprised it's getting reviews that high, but I'm also just kind of like surprised, period, that it's getting reviews that high. I already plan to see it again because I have some friends that are really looking forward to seeing it. So maybe when I'm like not sick and my head's a bit more clear, I can get more of an accurate read on the film and be able to give it a more just review. And I don't want to prattle on too much either, but I will say this. If you're like me and you like Nicolas Cage, or you love Nicolas Cage, then you are probably going to enjoy this film a lot. It's going to be a pretty great time. If you don't like Nicolas Cage, or, you know, take him or leave him and all that, I mean, I think you'll still glean some enjoyment out of the film, whether you're a fan of Pedro Pascal or not. I think you'll still glean some enjoyment, but it's nothing that's going to be for you to write home about, you know, at some point this year. Like, oh, you know, did you ever hear about that movie? Oh, you got to check it out, Nicolas Cage or not. But I think this film, I think I put this as the title of the thumbnail, this film works very well if you're a fan of Nick Cage. A lot of references, and I mean a lot of references to his filmography. Does it stand on its own two legs? That's still a bit shaky. I think it stands just enough on its own where it could hold itself together. It's not a perfect film. I thought it was really good. Thinking about this movie in a world where I hadn't seen a second trailer, in a world where I was 100% clear-headed, of sound mind and body, and not all foggy-brained, and in a world where I just love Nick Cage and have that bias going on as well, I gotta be fair. I'm pretty sure I would give Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent at the very highest I would give it is a low 4 out of 5. I think a low 4 out of 5. At first, I was on the fence between that and a high 3, but I think if I'm being fair, I can't consider this film just a high 3, purely based on the scenes that have Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal in them. I mean, it deserves definitely more than that. So, the film as a whole, it still has some flaws. It still could have used some polishing in terms of editing, and perhaps maybe a more engaging narrative, more character development and involvement from all the characters, not just Nick and Pedro. I think a lot of other characters kind of take a backseat to the narrative. They kind of set up Nicolas Cage to have this character arc that, I mean, it does eventually happen, but not conventionally, and it's questionable as to whether that character arc is earned or not. I suppose you could say it is earned, but I don't know. It's a fun, zany, good time that I think, is it R? The funny part is, this film was rated R, right? But I think it's mostly just for language. Like, there's a good chunk of violence happens in the film, but it never gets too bloody or gory, so I'm pretty sure the R is literally for, like, drug use and a lot of, like, fucks, basically. But I digress. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. As I said, thank you to Regal for allowing me to see this film early. Sorry to everybody at home for me looking and sounding different. I can already feel myself crashing pretty hard right now, but I just mustered up enough energy to be able to get this review out there so I can at least have some thoughts on the film. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed this film. I think that marketing for it was top-notch, spot on. I just wish the film matched that energy, and perhaps once I view it again, when I have a clearer head, perhaps it will. But in the meantime, those are my thoughts on The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which I will still say is probably one of the two most creative movie titles I have heard so far this year. Goodbye, travelers.